Hello children, good afternoon and welcome to the adventures of Tzar the Paddington Poodle. Brahman Bull Encounter. Oh, we have little Ziggy with us today, however, off he's going. Goodbye Ziggy. Bye. So I hope you're enjoying your holiday so far. Alright, let's get stuck into it. You're all comfortable? Meanwhile, Tzar, Ruby and Wally were still floating down the river towards the ocean when they finally hit a submerged sand dune 25 metres out from the bank. "It looks like we're stuck," said Tzar, and before anyone could do anything to stop him, he picked up the winch line and dived through the open window into the water. "No, Tzar!" screamed Ruby and Wally, but they were too late. He was already paddling as fast as he could towards the riverbank, dragging the tow rope behind him. "Blimey, this metal hook is heavier than I thought it would be," spluttered Tzar between mouthfuls of salty water. He felt something brush past his legs and almost jumped out of his skin. Despite the terror that had gripped his body, he picked up the pace and kept going. Any second now, he expected a crocodile to snap his torso in two. But instead, the thing gave his back legs a nudge, pushing him gently forward, causing him to drop the hook. Just as he was about to dive down to retrieve it, up popped the Merton's water monitor he'd seen earlier on that day. "Geez, you scared the living daylights out of me," said Tzar. "Sorry, man," replied the lizard. Treading water to keep himself afloat, Tzar asked, "What on earth were you doing?" "I saw a couple of crocodiles lurking in the reeds not too far from here and thought you could do with a hand. But I wanted to first make sure you weren't going to bite me," she replied, grinning wickedly at Tzar. "You know, you could have just asked," he spluttered, shaking his head in disbelief. "I guess," she replied. Diving below the surface, she disappeared out of sight. "Great. I suppose I will have to retrieve the hook myself," he grumbled, taking a deep breath and readying himself for the dive. But before he stuck his head under the water, up popped the lizard with the hook and rope securely in her mouth. "Here you are," she said, handing them to Tzar. "Thanks, said Tzar, cocking his head to the side. "It's Speck, on account of all the speckles all over my body," she laughed. "Well, I'm really grateful, Speck," mumbled Tzar, distracted by Wally, who was flapping his arms frantically. "Crocodile!" screamed Wally, pointing to the water about 20 metres downstream from Tzar and Speck. "Quick, start paddling, I'll push you along," she said, tucking her nose under Tzar's back legs and propelling him forward like a speedboat at full throttle. They finally hit the bank of the river and were clambering up the embankment, winch line in tow, when a large crocodile with its jaws wide open lunged at them. So we have here Speck and Tzar going very quickly, paddling very quickly with the crocodile in the background. Gasping and heaving, Tzar managed to splutter. Phew, that was close, as he and Speck watched the crocodile slip back into the water and paddle away empty-handed. "Well, I best be off," she said. "Haven't finished getting dinner for the kids yet," she panted. "Tzar, you were brilliant," squealed Ruby. "You know that was a stupid thing to do, Tzar, but thank you," said Wally, giving him a big hug. They unhitched the ute from the tree, then jumped into the cabin and drove off to set up camp before the others arrived. Back at the river crossing, Bullet was praising Shout for his quick action by whinnying, "Boy, you gave them a lesson." "Thanks, Bullet. Now we need to keep moving. Those baby crocodiles are reasonably harmless, but I am concerned about those two big ones that are slowly now making their way towards us." Turning his head around, he said to Ziggy, "Remember what I said, stay down in the saddlebag." As he spoke, he caught sight of something slithering towards him at lightning speed and instinctively reared up out of the water as an enormous water python swam under his belly, making a beeline for the two large crocodiles. Taking no notice of Shout's warning, Ziggy was recklessly dangling his front legs over the side of the saddlebag to get a better view and was instantly dislodged, tumbling headfirst in towards the river. "Help!" he screamed. Hearing his plea, the mum quickly leapt down and grabbed Ziggy by the tail, hoisting him up and onto the saddle with her before he hit the rapids and disappeared forever. "You are one lucky poodle," said Shout, watching the mum safely stow Ziggy in the saddlebag. Meanwhile, the beautiful python didn't even hesitate as it passed under Shout's belly, and in a flash it had wrapped its enormous scaly body around the large crocodile, and they went into a wild spin, turning around and around, thrashing the water with their long tails. With his powerful back legs, the crocodile propelled them straight up and out of the water, then slammed the python against the rapids. The crocodile then went into a death roll, spinning over and over and over under the water in an attempt to disorientate the snake. The herd had stopped in the middle of the river, transfixed by the incredible spectacle. None of them, including Ranger, had ever seen anything like this before, and they watched in amazement as the mighty python and the powerful crocodile fought to the death. "Don't stop now, it's too dangerous," screamed Ernie, scrambling up the steep embankment. But the gang was in a trance and couldn't tear their eyes away as both the serpent and the reptile vied to get the upper hand from the other. So here we have Shout and rearing out of the water, and Ziggy almost falling into the water, and you can see the python swimming under Shout's legs. Ernie flicked his whip into the air, cracking it loudly, but no one was paying any attention to the drover. There was a sharp intake of breath when the mighty python lost its grasp, but with renewed determination it latched onto the crocodile's foot with its sharp teeth and tightened its deathly grip, squeezing and squeezing its scaly body around the croc. So here we have the croc and the mighty python fighting till the death. The crocodile fought hard, but the mighty python was not to be defeated and eventually managed to pin the croc's head under the water, cutting off the oxygen supply, and the crocodile's body went limp. Tearing off at great speed, the other large crocodile joined the juveniles on the riverbank and watched in horror as the serpent slowly defeated their friend. With a crack of Jimmy's whip, Ranger, Shout, Bullet and Bucky snapped out of the spill they were under and pushed the herd through the water and up the embankment. "Will you look at that?" said Ranger, pointing his nose to the python who was dragging its prize to the riverbank. To their amazement, the snake opened its tiny mouth into an enormous cavern and centimetre by centimetre slowly drew the crocodile into its belly. With one final swallow, the crocodile's tail disappeared and was never to be seen in the flesh again. It had been the most incredible experience, and the gang just stood there spellbound. "Oh my goodness, that was awesome!" shrieked Ziggy. They ambled across to see how the serpent was faring. Shout wasn't taking any chances and kept a safe distance between them and the snake in case it decided to devour them, though, given its recent feast, was highly unlikely. "You really nailed that crocodile," said Ziggy, eyeing the python's body, which was stretched out in the shape of the recently deceased. "Mungo is the name. Please forgive me. It seems I have built up some gas in my belly," he said, burping loudly again. Whipping his head around, he said, "Goodness, I do believe I've acquired a set of dorsal shields," admiring his new interior armour. I'm Ziggy and this is Shout. Pleased to make your acquaintance," replied the serpent. "Boy, will Tzar be disappointed not to have met you," Ziggy said proudly. "Who on earth is Tzar?" Mungo asked. "My big brother, of course. He and Wally and Ruby went ahead to set up camp and get dinner ready." "Oh dear, don't mention dinner. I just ate dinner," squirming around to get his protruding belly into a more comfortable position. "If it is all the same to you, I would like to get settled and digest this monstrosity. Good evening to you." And with that, Mungo closed his eyes, ending any further conversation. "Bye, Mungo," said Ziggy as Shout broke into a canter to catch up to the others. Tzar, Ruby and Wally finally arrived at the campsite, which was surrounded by large rock escarpments, protecting them from the elements. They set up the makeshift stables for the horses and prepared dinner, then waited patiently by the fire for the gang to arrive. Fingers crossed nothing went wrong, said Tzar, gazing into the distance. Oh, I think, look, there they are, replied Ruby, jumping up and down in excitement. Excuse me, Tzar, I need to let Wally know that they're here, she said, taking her leave. As the sun made its last-ditched attempt to retire for the evening, the weary gang hobbled into camp. Ziggy marvelled at the magnificent rock formations that were catching the last rays of the sun as they danced on the beautiful cliff, flooding it in a rainbow of deep reds, pinks and ochres, and sighed in contentment. He spotted Tzar by the camp kitchen, his heart skipped a beat. Thanks for the ride, shout. You're the best, squealed Ziggy, leaving the big horse and bounding over to join Tzar, his tail wagging in wild excitement. See you tomorrow, whinnied Shout, tossing his handsome black hair in the air and parking himself in the next stall next to Bullet, to his best friend in the world. As they slowly nibbled their dinner, the pair reminisced on the day's events. We'd better get some shut-eye. We're on the midnight watch, he said, looking out at the herd who were resting peacefully under Chester and Bucky's attentive eye. He glanced over to the beautiful bay mare and noticed she was fast asleep. Oh, well, he sighed. The words had barely left his lips when he too fell asleep. Sound asleep, his bottom lip drooping, spilling any remaining oats from his mouth. So here we have the gang coming into the beautiful escarpment. Thank goodness you're all okay, said Tzar, relieved to see them in one piece. Boy, have I got some news for you, said Ziggy, rolling his eyes dramatically. Me too, laughed Tzar. But before we go there, I really need to discuss something that has been bothering me since we left the river. Well, what is it, said Tzar, cocking his head to the side. I think something or some things have been stealthily following us, and I sense danger, but can't quite put my paw on it, said Ziggy. I see. Have you told Ranger and Shout? Asked Tzar. Well, no, because I haven't seen anything concrete as yet. Look, it's been a big day for everyone, so let's get some dinner, and if need be, we can alert Ranger to keep his eyes open for any problems before we hit the sack, he added as Ziggy ambled over to the campfire. Now, I bet you're starving, he said, looking down at his little brother with deep affection. You're right, I am starving. His stomach was rumbling like an outback road train travelling at full speed. With all the excitement of today, food was the last thing on my mind, he said, eyeing his dinner that had thoughtfully laid out by the fire. He made a mental note to thank Wally in the morning. Hi, Zig, glad to see you make it in one piece. Tzar has been going out of his mind with worry, said Ruby. Great to see you too, Ruby. There was definitely a couple of close calls, but as you can see, I'm okay, he laughed between mouthfuls of food. With full bellies, Ziggy and Tzar plonked themselves down on their beds that were laid out by the fire to catch up on the day's events. There were lots of oohs and ahs as they took it in turn to share their adventures. Exhaustion finally overcame Ziggy, and he curled himself up in a tight ball, and within a couple of seconds he was out like a light. Nighty-night, Zig, said Tzar, tucking his little brother in. He left his bed and joined Wally, Ernie, Jimmy and his folks, who were sitting around the campfire laughing and cajoling about the day's events. It was the deep melodious tune emanating from the didgeridoo that woke Ziggy, and he sat up and wiped the sleep from his eyes. You're just in time for the corroboree, said Tzar, his eyes wide like saucers. The poodles watched in wonder as Ernie and Wally blew into the didgeridoo, a long, colourful tube that was made from a local eucalyptus tree that took them on a musical adventure of the Australian outback. Each tune sounded to them like some of the birds that they heard earlier that day. There was a high-pitched call of the wedge-tailed eagle, and the whistle of the whistling kite, and the operatic overtures of the magpie. Within minutes of striking their first tune, some of the mob from the Borroloola Aboriginal tribe arrived, and Jimmy, Ernie and Wally greeted them affectionately, then introduced them to the mum and the dad and the poodles. This is so cool, said Ziggy, as he and the others immersed themselves in the face-painting ritual. The mob painted Ernie, Jimmy and the folks' faces in traditional patterns, and the moon and the sun on Tzar and Ziggy. There was lots of singing and dancing. Then everybody settled down to listen to Dreamtime, with the gentle hum of the didgeridoo in the background. "Tell us how the koala lost its tail," whooped Tzar. Everyone was mesmerised as the locals talked of this land and how it came to be, how the rainbow serpent pushed its way up out of the earth and created huge mountains and deep ravines with sweet water billabongs, how the halo around the moon brings the rain to fill the gorges and the rivers, and how the kangaroo got its pouch and the koala lost its tail, and how the dingo walks this land both as hunter and protector, and how man must live in harmony with all creatures that share this sacred land. So here we have the didgeridoo and the little corroboree. The elders talked for hours and hours, and everyone just sat there listening, fascinated by the rich indigenous stories, until eventually, one by one, Tzar, Ziggy, the mum and the dad fell asleep. Well, that's all of Chapter 7 tonight, children. I'm sure you've enjoyed this. We look forward to bringing you Chapter 8 tomorrow. Have a lovely evening. Goodbye and see you later. Bye.